Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and right now as I'm filming this, it is Friday afternoon, March 22nd. I just pulled up and let Katie out of the car. I just picked her up from school. It was the last day of school before spring break, and we have had a really busy month, and I just wanted to film a new intro for my February wrap-up. I actually filmed my February wrap-up on March 3rd or 4th, but anytime I have time to edit, I've been working on my reading vlogs for the month and just, everything for March Mystery Madness and all of that. So I'm just super late getting this February wrap-up done and uploaded. So I'm going to cut now to the footage that I filmed earlier in the month and let you know what I read for the month of February. Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and we are a few days into the month of March and March Mystery Madness and all of the other readathons that are going on in March, and I am just going to take a few minutes to tell you about all the books that I read in February, which was not as many as I had hoped. I am already having a way better reading month in March than I did in February. I had a lot of things to do in February, so it's okay. I finished 11 books in the month of February. 3 of them were print, and all 3 of those books were books I had started in January. In fact, I carried over 4 books in print into February. One of them was a cozy mystery, so I didn't focus too much on it. I went ahead and saved it for March to finish it up. And the other 3, I made sure I got done with them and counted those for February because I just wanted to be done with those books. All of the rest of the books that I finished in February were on audio. I did make some progress on books for my 20 by 20 challenge, including some books that were part of series that I am hoping to finish this year, or at least as part of the 20 by 20 challenge. I listened to some book club books, and I had one book that was just a complete impulse read. I'm also participating in Sarah's challenge to listen to books from 2 different categories on the Audible Romance package, and I finished one and started one that I am carrying over into March because it's a mammoth. And so let me just go over all the books that I read in February. For my local library book club, I listened to The Wonder by Emma Donaghue, and I did not enjoy this as much as I hoped I might. Actually, I really didn't expect to enjoy it that much. Let me just clarify. It's pretty rare that I start a book thinking I'm just going to hate it. And I did enjoy Room by her, but I read the description and it just didn't have that big of an appeal to me. I talked a little bit about this in an earlier Friday Reads video. I think what really soured this book for me was the main character of the nurse. I just didn't like her attitude. I didn't like that she had absolutely no inclination that it was even a possibility that this little girl could have been an actual wonder. And I would have liked for her to be a little more open-minded about other people's faith. And it just kind of soured me. As far as the book goes, I was happy enough with the ending. I thought it ended as well as it could, considering all the circumstances. But it wasn't really a book that I would recommend, and it wasn't a book that I particularly enjoyed. I only read it because it was a book club book. And speaking of book club books, I joined a brand new book club that is not affiliated with any library or organization. It was started by a couple of friends of mine, and the first pick was The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and we have not met about that book yet, but I wanted to go ahead and get it done in the month of February so that it wouldn't take away from the mystery books that I was reading in March. And I listened to it all in one day on February 28th. It was a very good book. But again, I realized that I am a very big character reader, and I didn't really love the main characters, and that made me feel like I didn't enjoy it quite as much as other World War II books where I really got behind the main characters fully. I did enjoy the book though. It was a very compelling read. I would recommend it if you enjoy World War II books and books about the oppression of the Jews during that time period. I found out after I had finished the book that it is based on a true story, at least according to the author's notes and according to a friend of mine who's also in the book club who had finished it as well. So I didn't know that going into it. I just thought it was a fiction book. And knowing now that it was nonfiction, action made me appreciate it even more. And of course, I know that the reality of what happened to the Jewish people during that time period was horrific. And I hate to read things about that time period because of that, but at the same time, I think it's really important that we understand that that happened so that we never let that type of thing happen again. So if you enjoy reading books about that time period, I would definitely recommend The Tattooist of Auschwitz. It is by Heather Morris. A couple of impulse reads that I read in February. One was called Reading People by Anne Bogel. I found that book because in January someone had told me about Anne Bogel and her blog and her podcast, and so I found her book called I'd Rather Be Reading, and I noticed that she had another book called Reading People, and I discovered that it was not a book about people who read. It was a book about analyzing people's personalities, and I believe it was the Myers-Briggs test that she was referring to in her book. I think I've taken a couple of questionnaires based on Myers-Briggs, but I have not studied it extensively like Anne has. It was a very interesting book. I did enjoy it, and I am kind of interested now to go back and really analyze my own personality based on that test. Most of my knowledge of personality types is from a different study that is called the bipolar study of personalities, and that has nothing to do with bipolar disorder. It's simply based on the philosophy that you lead with one strength or another, and then within either of those strengths you lead with one or the other within those two strengths. So it becomes a bipolar type of personality study. I'm not sure who the author of that was, but one of my college mentors named Joyce Sibley, who is an author, wrote a book about the bipolar study of personalities, and I did take a class by her when I was in college, so I will try to find a link to that study and list that below if you're interested in that. It was a very interesting look at personalities, and so the Myers-Briggs has some similarities but just comes from a little different philosophy. Another impulse read that I listened to this month is Vox by Christina Dalcher. I did not enjoy this nearly as much as I had hoped to. I love a good dystopian. I really enjoyed The Handmaid's Tale, but I don't remember The Handmaid's Tale having nearly this much foul language. In fact, the main character is a woman, and if you've heard anything about this book, you know that in this futuristic American society, women have been forbidden to speak any more than 100 words a day. And this woman had a pretty foul mouth, and I thought, okay, I know she's angry. I would be angry too, but I don't think I would waste any words or even any thought processes on foul language. It just isn't worth it. And she was supposed to be a smart person. And in my way of thinking, foul language just really makes you sound like you're not as smart as you probably are. So I kept wanting to tell her, think of intelligent things to say and think about, because you're just wasting all of this energy on foul language. So that's an aside about foul language, but that is really one of the big things that bothered me about this book. The other thing was that the bad guys in this book are Christians. This whole thing was brought about by radical fundamentalist Christians who wanted to put women in their place. And you know, that just bothers me when Christians are vilified like that, because in reality, if that type of thing were ever to happen, I don't think it's going to be the Christians who do it. It just bothers me, because the majority of Christian people I know are just really good people and wonderful people and wouldn't even dream of any sort of society like this or anything that remotely resembled it. So, you know, for the Christians to be made the bad guy was a little bit bothersome for me. But again, I can still appreciate a good dystopian story if I can get behind the main character. And in this situation, I just couldn't. I didn't think she was very likable, and I had a hard time standing behind her. And then to throw in adultery on top of that was just over the top. So again, I can't really recommend this book. I'm going to go back and read Handmaid's Tale, because now I'm curious to think, was there a lot of foul language in that book? If there was, I don't remember it. But anyway, if you want to read this, go for it, and then we can chat about it, but I just didn't care for it at all. I made some progress in 4 different series that I'm reading. In fact, I finished one trilogy. It is the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard trilogy by Riordan. I read The Ship of the Dead, or I listened to it on audio CD from my library, and I was a little disappointed in this one too. There was a lot going on in this book. I had a hard time following everything that was happening. There was still a lot of funny moments because Rick Riordan does have a really funny sense of humor, but I think I didn't enjoy this series overall as much as series like Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus, because I'm not nearly as familiar with the Norse gods as I am the Greek gods and even the Roman gods. So that made it just a little more difficult to enjoy. It's not a bad series though, and I was really excited because based on the last line of book 2, I knew there was going to be an appearance from a character from another series, and there was. I don't want to spoil anything, but this character was in the opening scene, but that's the only place that they appeared. I really wanted them to be in the book a little bit more, and they weren't, but I guess that's okay. This series wasn't meant to be about that character. It was meant to be about Magnus Chase. At least it was fun to have a cameo appearance by that character, so I really did enjoy that part. I was just disappointed that it wasn't longer. The other series that I made progress in are all part of read-alongs that I'm doing on my channel. I listened to book 6 in the Jodi Thomas Harmony series, and I really enjoyed it. These books are all about the town of Harmony and the residents from that community. In each book, we are introduced to 2 new characters, usually that we haven't met before, or maybe we've only met very briefly. And then we also get to catch up with some of the other characters that we've been following in previous books. This was no exception. This was very good. I really enjoyed it. There was a little bit of steaminess in this book, but in my old-fashioned brain, it was totally fine because those 2 people were married. So I really enjoyed this book a lot, and I'm looking forward to the next book in the series. I think I will go ahead and listen to the next book from this series in March. Even though it's technically not a mystery, all of them have had some sort of romantic suspense type element throughout each of the books, and so I think it'll be just fine for me to go ahead and read the next one during March Mystery Madness so that I can go ahead and continue with the series since I am enjoying it so much. So I had 3 print books that I finished up in the month of February. One of them was for the Home to Heather Creek read-along that I'm doing. I had been trying to read this since September. I finally started it in January and finished it at some point in the month of February. This is just the continuing story of a family of grandchildren who are now living with their grandparents on a farm. They have, prior to this, lived with their mom who was killed in an urban area, and so this is a new experience for them, living on a farm. And the series is quite good. It's just a very slow-paced series, and it's just hard sometimes to pick it up when a lot of things are going on in my life, and I am happy that I finished it. I'm really looking forward to starting the next book in April because I'm not going to pick up another one of these in March since I'm trying to read mysteries, but I'm really looking forward to continuing on with the series. I do have a couple of people reading the series with me, and let me apologize again for being so far behind the original schedule that I set for these books, but I'll pick back up in April and we'll see how many I can get done, and I may have to just officially adjust the schedule, and we'll see how it goes from there. Then the next book I didn't technically finish until February 28th, and that was because I had to skim through the last 3 chapters. I think it was past midnight, so it was technically still March the 1st, but I have this tendency when I'm really trying to finish a print book and it's the last day of the month, I will invariably get so sleepy trying to finish a book or 2 books that I end up just skimming through to the end and saying, okay, legalistically I'm done with that book, but when I wake up in the morning I'm gonna have to actually read it again because I'm not gonna remember anything that I skimmed through. And that's what I had to do with my last 2 books. One of them is for my Cherry Cola read-along, Queen of the Cookbooks, book 5. It's by Ashton Lee, and I had such a hard time struggling through this book because I really was not enjoying it. There were just things that rubbed me the wrong way. The series is not bad. I just kept getting pulled out of the story by these bits of dialogue and things that happened that I just didn't think ought to be there. I don't know. I know that the author put in a lot of work on these books, and I hate that there are things that I don't like about them because I really wanted to love this whole series. I'm still planning to read the last book, and I hope that it is much more enjoyable for me than these others have been. If you're hearing this, I have probably edited out some of the rambling I've been doing about this because I think I ought to save it for a series review. Let me just say, I really wanted to love these books, and they have missed the mark somewhere. I don't hate them, but I don't love them. So that's all for now, and when I finish the last book in April, I'll come back and do a series review, and we could even do a live show discussion if any of the rest of you who have read several of the books want to. We certainly can. So let's move on. One more print book I started in January because of the Buzzwordathon. The word was lies, and even though this is a different context, it was the only book I could find on my shelf that had the word lies in it, and I didn't really enjoy this book as much as I had hoped. I really enjoyed the series by Richard Peck that included A Year Down Yonder and A Long Way from Chicago, and there's a third book, I can't remember the title of it, it's a Christmas themed book that is part of that series. So that was such a fun series that I had really high hopes for this book. It wasn't bad, I just didn't enjoy it nearly as much as that other series, and for some reason I just had a hard time picking it up. It's a really short book, it's even in large print, but for some reason I just picked it up sporadically here and there and had a hard time getting through it very quickly. And I'm really happy that I got it done. It was a cute story about two siblings. It took place a little prior to World War I, I believe, when automobiles were just coming into their own, and this pair of siblings owned a garage to fix flats and repair cars, and so it was car related, which was kind of fun. But again, it's not something that I absolutely loved, but it was a cute book. I listened to 2 books for Sarah's Audible Romance Challenge. Her categories that she chose this month were Roaring Twenties and 15th to 19th Century England. So for Roaring Twenties, I listened to a book called Sugar Fork by Walt Larimore, and I enjoyed that a lot. It was about a teenage girl living with her family in the Great Smoky Mountains, and of course it was set during Prohibition, and there was a lumber company who really wanted her family's land and would stop at nothing to get it, not even murder. So there was some suspense, there was some drama and action along with the romance, and I enjoyed it a lot. Then for 15th to 19th Century England, I could have opted for something shorter, but as I was going through the list, I kept being drawn back to Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore. I have heard of Lorna Doone really just in the context of being a food brand, and I really didn't know anything about the book, and I just decided to go ahead and start it. It's a 25-hour audiobook, and I got maybe a third of it done in the month of February, and then I found out about March of the Mammoths, and after I ordered the print book and saw that it was 811 pages, I decided that it would go ahead and count for my Mammoth book for March of the Mammoth. And because even though it's technically a romance, there is a crime family in the story, so I think it will fit along just fine with all of the mystery books that I'm reading for March. So I am continuing on with Lorna Doone in the month of March. And then I had one other book that I started in January, and I barely picked it up at all in the month of February because it's a mystery, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and focus on these other books that I want to finish and save the mystery for March. And that book is Grave Mistake by Janice J. Richardson. It's book 3 in the Spencer Funeral Home Niagara Cozy Mystery Series. So you'll be hearing more about that as I continue it. I'm only about 17% done right now on ebook on my Kindle, and I'm really enjoying it. So that is what I read for the month of February. Part of the reason I didn't get as much read is because I had company during the month and I had to do some house cleaning to get ready for the company. I also continued to listen to Anne Bogel's podcast, and that took away some hours from my audiobook time. And I also was a speaker at our county librarians training. I did a program as a breakout session on bookish resources on the internet, and also electronic library resources. So that was a lot of fun, and I had to do some preparation for that, and so I just had a lot going on in the month of February, but it was a great month overall. And now I am excited to say that so far, my first few days of March, I am very happy with what I have gotten read, and I'm enjoying what I'm reading. So I have started a sort of a vlog style video that I will piece together over the next few days. Let me know what you read in February. Let me know if you have read any of the books that I read in February and what you thought of them, or if you're interested in reading any of them, and we can always chat about them. So that's all for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.